Now, the U.S. military has been granted broader authority to carry out strikes against al Shabaab in Somalia. The White House has declared parts of Somalia an area of active hostilities for at least 180 days, but Mogadishu was not included. For more insight, Jibril Mohamed, a professor in Somalia issues at The Ohio State University, joins me live via Skype from Columbia, Ohio. Welcome, Professor.
Thank you for having me.
Now, we know that the U.S. has been involved, is still involved somewhat in Somalia, but what is going to be different with this new, broader kind of authority to the military?
So this authority changes the rules of engagement in Somalia for the U.S. military there. Initially, there were requirements imposed by the Obama administration to the effect that civilians should not be harmed when conducting airstrikes. And also, the targets of those airstrikes, which are usually al Shabaab members, should pose a threat to Americans. So those conditions are not required anymore. And an approval process that was supposed to be going from Africa to Washington, D.C. is not going to be followed from this point of time onwards.
Now, we know that the U.S. has said, and President Trump has said, he's committed to decimating the terrorist organizations. Is there any win-win situation in any way or fashion?
So the fight against al Shabaab is a legitimate fight against a terrorist organization that's killing more Somalis than anyone else. However, authorizing airstrikes and combat missions that are not scrutinized for civilian casualties would really cause more problems. And al Shabaab would gain a foothold in terms of recruiting people that are disenfranchised by the new killings. As you know, Somalis are mostly nomadic people that move from one place to another. People in the country are heavily armed all over the place. Right now, there is a drought that's almost becoming a famine that's uprooting many people who are fleeing from their homes into major cities. And they are moving in groups, in vehicles, on foot, and some of them are carrying weapons. And if the U.S. Military strikes those people, then the new rules imply that that's okay, and which is not really
so
okay.
A case of kind of mistaken identity where people were just carrying guns because they're herdsmen could be killed. But here's a question: do you think this kind of authority has been given without consulting with Somali leadership?
I am not really sure. Maybe the news that came from the Pentagon states that, the request came from the Africa Command Center. And therefore, I would expect the U.S. command in Africa to be consulting with the Somali authorities there. I think it's time to strike al Shabaab hard, but civilians and the interests of the local populations should be taken into consideration when fighting al Shabaab. And the fight should not eliminate the people in the country.
And we hope so. Professor Mohamed, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
All right, that's Jibril Mohamed, a professor on Somalia issues at The Ohio State University in Columbus, Ohio.